Welcome back to my channel. Tonight's story is about secrets, timing, and the exact moment two guilty faces realize they have been perfectly exposed. Title: She thought she was safe with her secret lover. I walked in and watched their faces drop. The night smelled like rain and cheap cologne. I had known for weeks that something had shifted with Nora. Her excuses began to pile up like unopened letters. Late nights at the office that never matched her calendar. Phone calls she took outside the house and whispered into, as if privacy was an expensive secret. Small lies multiplied until honesty felt like a contraband item in our home. I could have confronted her in the usual way. Shout, demand, make a scene. That would give the guilty a script. Act surprised, blame stress, cry, and maybe be forgiven. That cycle was familiar. Predictable. I wanted something different. I wanted the truth to hit them without the noise that lets people hide. So I planned with patience instead of fury. 2 Saturdays ago, I found a receipt in the glove compartment of my car. It was for a hotel 2 towns over, time-stamped later than the night Nora said she went straight home. I did not show the receipt. Copied it. I watched. I waited. I followed patterns. When she said she had to work late, I checked the office cameras. When a friend suggested a dinner, I called that friend casually and listened to the pause in their voice. The evidence stacked like a quiet indictment. I never once raised my voice. Calm is surgical when done right. Last Friday, Nora told me she was meeting a client for a late dinner downtown. She kissed me lightly, then left with the practiced ease of someone who has learned how to carry a lie like a second wallet. The front door clicked shut. I watched the taillights disappear and felt none of the dramatic heat I might have felt a year earlier. That old anger was replaced by a cold steadiness. I drove to the restaurant she named. I sat across the street in my car, rain beating on the windshield like the tick marks on a waiting clock. I watched 2 figures slip out together an hour later. I followed them at a distance and watched them climb into a car I recognized from the parking lot photos I had stored away. They drove to a small apartment building, the kind with a blinking light and thin curtains, the sort of place people choose when discretion is the priority. I parked 2 blocks away, phone ready, camera on silent. I did not want to be the man who caught them in the act and lost control. I wanted proof served like a fact, not a performance. I waited until the 3rd floor light blinked off. Then I walked to my car and drove home. I timed everything to know where they would be, not to follow them into the dark. Evidence, not rage. That was the rule I set for myself. At 2 in the morning, I drove to a small motel a few exits away. I checked in under a fake name and reserved the room directly across the hall from a unit, with a balcony that faced the building where the lover lived. I wanted a vantage point, a witness seat, something no one could dispute later. I took a book and pretended to read while listening for doors closing and soft shoes on the steps. When their door finally opened, the light through the crack was thin and warm like a lie told under a lamp. They moved together like people comfortable enough to forget caution. Nora laughed in a voice I knew used to belong to me, and the man put his hands on her waist like he had placed a stake. I waited until they were settled, until the night had turned private enough to feel permanent. Then I walked across the corridor and pressed my key into the motel door. A man at reception gave me a look that said nothing and a room key that said everything. I entered like someone who was merely another guest. I dressed in a shirt I knew Nora liked on me and sat on the small balcony with the cigarette I no longer smoked. I could hear muffled laughter through the walls, the kind of careless sounds that betray a belief in safety. They thought they were in a place where doors closed and the world outside ceased to exist. The arrogance of that belief felt obscene. At 3:14 a.m., I stood and walked to their building. I took the elevator up, each floor a small rumble under my feet. When I reached the 3rd floor, I paused, quiet, deliberate. I rang the buzzer lightly once, long enough for a human response but short enough to startle. The door opened about an inch. I stuck my head into the hallway like a neighbor who had lost his keys. "Nora!" called softly. My voice had that strange neutrality I had cultivated. She yelped, the sound small and immediate. The man, I later learned his name was Tom, stood up too fast and knocked over a glass. The sound of breaking glass is one of the most honest noises there is. They looked at me for a single stretched second. Faces that had been full of laughter tightened like puppets with snapped strings. Surprise, then recognition, then the moment I had waited for, the collapse into shame. Nora's face went white. Her shoulders hunched. Tom's smirk evaporated as color drained from his neck. He fumbled for words like someone trying to patch a hole with tissue. "What are you doing here?" Nora stammered. "You're supposed to be with a client," I said. My tone was careful, controlled. I did not shout. I did not accuse. I stated a fact like a headline. I thought I'd say hello. Tom opened a mouth and closed it again like someone tasting metal. He tried to explain, but the syllables came out thin. Nora tried to reach for me, to stand between us, but the space she stepped into was one she had helped build. "Please," she whispered. "Mark, this isn't." "It is what it is," I replied. "I don't need explanations." I needed to know. For a moment the three of us stood in the hallway, a triangle sharpened by truth. The neighbors' doors were closed, but footsteps moved somewhere down the stairs like a distant thunder. Shame is louder than any accusation because it arrives with every detail already turning on itself. Tom tried to salvage something with anger, but anger looks small when measured against plain evidence. Nora's eyes moved to his hands, then to mine, and finally to the floor. I watched their faces drop in slow motion, like light extinguishing one room at a time. I did not make a scene. I did not shout that she had ruined years or make public the private sorrow. I left them standing there with the revelation like a mirror that couldn't be ignored. The quiet of my exit spoke more than any diatribe I might have offered. When I walked down the stairs, the rain had stopped. The air smelled washed and new. I felt hollow where something once lived, and also oddly free. Secrets have weight until they are exposed. Once that happens, they either crack you or let you breathe. At home the next morning, Nora left a note on the kitchen table. "I am sorry. Please call." I didn't. I sat at the window and watched as morning arrived like a verdict. The faces I had watched drop the night before would carry that look for a long time. Exposure is a life sentence for lies. Regret arrives slowly for the guilty, but it arrives nonetheless. I had wanted their proud smirks to vanish. They had. What remained was the quieter question. Could truth build something back, or was it simply the end of the play? I walked away without a show. Some lessons do not need an audience. They just need daylight. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and like the video for more stories like this.